Welcome to Real and Raw. Your story is your medicine, the podcast with Letizia.
Hello, and welcome everyone to a new episode of the Real and Raw podcast with your host, Letizia. How are you all doing? When was actually the last time you really checked in and asked yourself sincerely and consciously how you feel? Why don't we just start actually by just closing our eyes for a moment and maybe taking a comfortable seat, or maybe you're lying down, or maybe you're even on the street walking. So if so, do not close your eyes. But if you are in a space where you can close your eyes, just do that for a moment. Also, if you're walking, just really be mindful for a moment and just tune in on how you feel. Really just observe how your body is feeling, your physical body, but also how is your emotional body, your mental body, and even your energetic body. Just for a moment, just tuning in and becoming aware of your breath. And maybe all the energy of yours that has been scattered can now bring it back to your body. And all the energy that is not yours, bring it back or give it back to where it belongs. So you can really feel that fullness of yourself, of your own energy. And just take a couple of more breaths here, just to really feel everything. Just noticing whatever is present. How does that feel? Wow, it's something, it's a really, very basic practice, but how often do we just forget about that, right? Like we're so busy with life that we forget to just simply breathe and just tune in and ask, how am I feeling? What is actually going on in my inner landscape? And yeah, like I have been kind of forgetting about that lately. And I know it's always comes in cycles, right? Everything is always a cycle. And there are moments where it feels easier, where it's easier for me to tune into that, moments where I feel like I'm losing myself. But in the end, like also that kind of like belongs to the process of life, right? But lately I could feel that it was so difficult for me to get up in the morning and have my normal morning routine, my practices. And I also kind of let go of that need to having to do that, because it can also kind of get into an obsession. So I just allowed myself to do that. Like I was so tired. Like honestly, in spring, I always get so exhausted. And I was like, when it all started, when spring started, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, because it can be a story that I tell myself that I'm tired and exhausted. And so I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. But then I felt so tired and exhausted. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think maybe I am just tired and exhausted. It's not just a story I'm making up. But at least it came from a place of like, you know, I'm aware of what is going on. And so I gave myself also that space to sleep in the morning. And, instead of having this kind of rigid morning practice of moving and meditation, I was just, when I woke up, I stayed in bed and I was just, okay, I'm contemplating here. I'm just noticing here what is alive for me. And yeah, now I can notice that it's kind of like coming back. So again, you see, it's just all these, it's all just a cycle. It's all process. And it's all just like the weather. I love how my roommate, he always says, like, look, it's just like the weather. One day it's like it's sunny, the other day it's raining, and it's all good, right? And it's true. So yeah, But then also like something that I have realized throughout these last few weeks is that, I was really in a space of where I could feel this really deep longing for love, for a partner, for partnership. And it came to a point where it was kind of like, it felt like, oh my God, there's something missing. I want that now. And then, where it kind of got obsessive. And I was like, okay, just stop there for a moment. And yeah, I allow myself to feel and to tune into that. And what was really beautiful was that I was actually longing for myself. I realized as I was meditating, I was like, oh, all I just wanted to was come back to feel myself, to see myself and to feel myself. And yeah, and with that being said, like, yes, I do. There is still also there's a longing for inviting a partner, a committed relationship. It is there. But the kind of like where it came from was like from a place of lack, of kind of neediness. And I was like, no, wait, this is not how how this quote unquote works, right? And so, sitting with that and just noticing, what was it like, what was I actually longing for? Because it felt like, oh, I feel so lonely and alone. And then I was just like, oh my God, I just want to be back in my body. I want to feel myself. I want to hold myself and see myself. And the moment I realized that, like, it all shifted. And I was like, wow, yeah, I'm arriving back home. I'm coming back to myself, coming back home. And then, like, all this it transformed. It did no longer come from a place of neediness. And I was able to also accept the fact that, yes, I do have that longing. I do have that desire to welcome it, a partner, a relationship. And yeah, the only thing is the place where it came from shifted. And yeah, I found that very beautiful to see that what I really needed was coming back to myself, coming back home, feeling myself, and just giving myself the love and attention that I kind of like neglected in these last few weeks. That I said, like, I didn't have my practice, which again was perfect. Like, I needed to kind of like, I always, there's this, and again, it's not actually losing myself, but it kind of feels that way. And so I feel like sometimes I do need that process of losing myself, because then the coming home is even sweeter. And it's like a whole new, like, it has a different notion to it. Like the texture kind of changed because it feels deeper. It feels even more in tune, more in integrity. And so it was a really beautiful revelation that I had as I was sitting in meditation. And I kind of like want to go into that as well, into a topic that I want to share with you in this podcast. And it's it's interesting because the reason why I even started this podcast was actually also that. Oh yeah, there's a helicopter. Pretty sure you can hear it. But yeah, as long as you can still hear me, all is well. And so yeah, the reason why I started this podcast in the first place was to share also my own story. And because it is storytelling is medicine. And so that's the reason why I share that. And of course, like, I invite other women as well to share their story, to give them a voice and a space to share their story, and with that, their medicine. And somehow I noticed that I'm kind of like holding back to what I really actually wanted to share with you. And the other day, I recorded a podcast with a dear friend of mine, with Annabelle. I was like, she invited me on her podcast, and we were talking after the recording. We were still talking to each other, and because I kind of shared with her also my, what I went through, what actually made me go into this very deep healing journey. I always like started. I have mentioned it already, but I never really mentioned what happened exactly, right? And I'm also not going to go into every detail in this podcast. I'm just going to, talk about parts of of the story of what happened, and like my how I lived it, and kind of like also giving tools and yeah, what helped me, right? And so I shared with her some of my story, and also shared that I'm kind of afraid of I noticed that I'm holding back, and she really gave me that courage again, and like to really remember, why do I do this, right? And storytelling is medicine. It is story medicine. It's for a reason. And she so beautifully said that it has been kind of forgotten throughout over the years. I mean, of course we still do that, but it's not as much as we used to. And we learn from each other, right? And so maybe that we can share our own experience, so maybe we don't have to go through the same. But again, like, also, since everyone is on their own journey, maybe we need to go through the same thing, but then at least we know, oh, I heard, like, I know she went through the same, and can maybe use the tools that maybe helped her might help me. Maybe they won't, but at least we see that we're not alone, and that there are other people, and and women who go through the same, right? And kind of like be, this, and share the wisdom of our own experiences, and so we can give that to others, right? And so the same thing is with women's circles. That's the reason why I do women's circles. It's to have a space where we can share our story, we can share from our heart what is present for us, and so we can learn from our own stories. We give ourselves our own answers, and at the same time we can hear other women share their experiences, and kind of like notice that, wow, in the end we're all kind of like going through the same, like maybe the story, how it happened, it's all kind of like in a different disguise, but in the end, like, the underlying emotion or the feeling, it is the same. And so we all kind of like deal with the same stuff, right? Just different experiences. Anyways, so today what I want to share is actually, they're like, I think they're gonna come two topics in this, but it goes hand in hand. And one thing is to really like trusting that our intuition, what it even means, what is our intuition, and and then at the same time, that dynamic of narcissist and empath. And I know, like, it's so all over the place, we all talk about that, but like to really see like what are also the energetics of, what are the energetics behind these dynamics, and how both parties co-create these relationships, right? And that it's not to blame, like, oh, it's the other person and no, like, how do we actually participate in these dynamics? And so, talking about that, I want to share my own story, like, a little bit about how I was involved in a relationship, in an intimate relationship. And by then I had no idea what it actually was, what the dynamics of that relationship was. It wasn't until years later that I noticed and realized that it was that kind of relationship, right? Where, because I am very empathic, I'm very sensitive, um and my partner at that time was, of course, wounded in his own way, and had more of those narcissistic tendencies. And again, like, I had no idea, I didn't even know by then like what that even meant, like, and so by then I really always thought like that's just how love is, that's how you need to feel in a relationship. And again, it wasn't until much later that I spoke about my experience where I was told like, wow, you were really like emotionally abused. You were he gaslighted you like crazy. And I was like, oh wow, that's so interesting, right? I had no idea. I just thought it was all just me, like I'm completely wrong, and it's all my fault, right? And oh, so I'm just trying to kind of like gather what I want to share exactly, like, because I don't want to go too much into detail with all the story, all that happened, but so where I also want to bring in the topic of intuition, that our intuition is always boom on spot. Again, like I want to just bring in there a short thing about intuition, like what is that? And a lot of times, or oftentimes, we actually confuse our intuition with distorted perceptions or like traumas, that we think, oh, that's actually my intuition telling me that, but in fact it's actually our trauma who is influencing us. And so it's really important to to really get like clear on our intuition. It is important to do the real deep work so we can actually clear, all of that is not ours, everything that is kind of distorting and blurring our view, so that we can become a clear vessel to see the actual truth, right? And so we need to kind of like peel back all those layers so we can really be in tune with our intuition. But the intuition really is that part of ours that is like, it just comes, boom, we just know. It's like that immediate thing, it's not something that our mind can think about. It's just this deep inner knowing, a deep feeling inside that boom just comes and you just know, right? And so a lot of times we're not even aware of that because it's so subtle, it's so at some point so quick, that we often we're not even aware of that, right? And so, but what I want to come into is like with that intuition. I remember in that relationship, it was actually, I was going along with all these dynamics, and something deep inside actually did tell me it doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. I mean, a lot of times I felt awful. I felt like the worst I've ever felt in my life. I went through a really bad depression, and I deep inside knew exactly why it was, but I just didn't want to believe it. I lied to myself. I talked myself into thinking, oh, no, it's not that relationship. It's not this dynamic. It's me. It's something else. Because I didn't want to believe it. I did not want to let go of that relationship. I didn't want to let go of, because letting go would mean, oh my God, who am I? Like, it would mean I would be dropped into like from a cliff. Like I would be thrown out from a cliff. And what, like, it just didn't feel, I feel like I could not bear that sensation of falling. And so I clinged onto that. I held onto that, and I was talking it. I was just telling myself that it's all good, everything is perfect, everything is beautiful. And at the same time, I even held on to the story of how beautiful it was, because to give a little bit of context on that, we met when we were both in Canada. We were having, we were, learning, we were at an English school, learning English. And so that's how we met. And then we had a long distance relationship. So that already, right, that, it's super interesting. Like, oh, wow, it's super special. I have that partner. He's from far away. We met somewhere exotic. And now we have this relationship. So I kind of like held on to that story as well. Like, our relationship is special. And this is so special. And everything is perfect. And even if it doesn't feel perfect, it's okay, right? And so yeah, that to kind of give context, right? And so already throughout, like kind of at the beginning, I could feel a lot of jealousy coming from his side, which then I noticed kind of like also like was projected on me in a sense of like I started to get very jealous. There was this insecurity that started to come up. And because at first I remember like sharing my own, from my past. And at first it was like, okay, yeah, and suddenly it felt like something shifted and it was suddenly held against me. And I would feel really bad for the things I've done before even meeting him. And I thought, oh, this is so bad. Like, I shouldn't have done all of that. And it was this huge mind fuck. And while because we were living on different continents, he, like, of course we didn't see each other sometimes for like, I don't know, a lot of months, like 4 to 5 months we didn't see each other. And so I found out, like, yeah, he did tell me that. And I mean, but it was always kind of like the way he told me was, kind of like, oh, by the way, but also not really telling me. It was very weird the way he would tell me, and it was obvious like that he cheated on me, right? And at first or maybe it was also me, I didn't even want to hear it. I was just so like, oh no, this is not the way it is. And yeah, so because then the thing was that like he had cheated on me, and then and I feel like even more than I am probably aware of. And things would come like after a few months or a year or so, like, oh, by the way, then like, and sharing more, like, oh yeah, but I told you. It's like, no, you never did. Oh yeah, I did. And like all distorting everything. And the worst part was that, right, that I actually, it hurt as fucking hell. Like, it hurt. But I was so obsessed. I was so afraid of letting that go. Like that, oh no, it's still perfect. Everything's perfect. Like, oh, it's just, everything is okay. That I would just, allow that to happen, And yeah, it kept on going. It kept on going. And yeah, exactly. Like I said, like he cheated several times on me. And at that same time, and I think it's kind of then when it also started, where the jealousy started to get really bad, and where he started to kind of like pull out that card of like, yeah, look what you have done before, and so now it's up, I can do the same. Kind of like, oh yeah, so we're even. And I knew deep inside it was like, this is not right. But I thought like, I feel like I kind of like even manipulated myself into thinking, and like the way he spoke to me was like, oh yeah, so that's just how it is, right? And that's, he needs to, be even in that sense. And deep inside I knew, no, this is not right. This is fucked up. But I didn't want to believe it, right? I was just too obsessed, and I was too in it, and I was too blind to see that. So anyways, that happened again, like many times. And where I want to bring intuition in was when we then actually, like after like 6 years of having a long distance relationship, we moved in together. We finally found each other in one country. We stayed there together, lived there. And after like not yeah like I would say like a year or so, not even a year, no, not even a year of living together, I had this very deep feeling of like there is another woman, and I just knew it, right? And I actually always thought like he's talking to his ex-girlfriend, like they're like kind of like still having something going on, because which was also kind of true, but maybe not in that moment. Anyways, so I always thought it was her, right? And I knew there was something going on, because when I, because again, like I started to get obsessed and crazy as well, I know. Because but at the same time, no, like because I knew something felt off, and I could see messages, and I did tell him, oh, but what about that? And he would just say, oh no, I don't remember about that. No, that didn't happen, right? And I was like, what? And I knew exactly that it happened. I'm like, I just saw it. And so my intuition was telling me like there's another woman, something is going on, right? And every time I would talk about that, he would just tell me like, oh, you're going crazy, you're too jealous, and blah 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 blah. And I was like, fuck. And at the same time, he even like when he showed me something on his phone, like a photo or whatever, he would put his phone on flight mode. So of course no message could come in. And I was like, this is so fucked up, right? But again, I was like, okay, yeah, I just still like, and that's what I'm like, wow, how deep asleep and blinded I was, that I did not, I was just too afraid. I had no idea how to get out of there. And so, this is just what I wanted to tell you is like, when you have that intuition, know that your intuition is on point. Like we women we always know when a man is not being faithful. We know. And like our intuition never ever lies. And so the difficult part is to really kind of like breaking out of that illusion of waking up and saying, whoa, no, wait a minute, right? And so unfortunately for me, I had to kind of learn the hard way, because I would have not like gotten out of that relationship. So, but by then actually what I thought was crazy, like, oh my God, how can that happen to me? Now I see as a huge blessing. And so, like after a while, it did come out. Like he would just like, actually, no, he broke up with me from one day to another. Just like that. It's like, no, no, this is too much. Like, we can't do this anymore. And then no, I think he didn't even tell me then yet that there was this other woman. But I mean, I knew. And he was always weird. And the last time he would just go away without telling me where he was. And I knew, of course I know, right? So yeah, and then even like after a while, I even found out that he went on holidays where he supposedly went alone, and I found out he was there with her. And it was just, I remember that morning, I was like, I mean, the pain I felt was insane. And the worst part is that not even then I was able to let go. I was still so, I felt like, no, like, how is that possible? Like, we had this beautiful, perfect thing, this relationship that was just perfect, and we loved each other so much. And I just kept on telling myself all these things. I was just not ready to see what was actually going on, right? And so I kept on telling myself these lies. And yeah, so then that happened, and I didn't realize that it's time to let go. And then something else needed to happen, which I might go into in another episode. I'm not going to go into that today, but something else happened that was like, boom, okay, until here. And now it's finished. And even then, it took me like, but until one day I was like, oh, fuck, I think now it's time, to say no. I have to think for myself. I have to, take care of myself, right? So with all of this being said, what I want to go into now is like, first of all, again, the intuition. Like my whole body knew from, maybe not from the beginning, but after a few years in, I just knew, right? But I didn't want to believe it. Because that would mean my whole world, the way I imagined it, would just fall apart. Everything that I've built up, all this illusion that I built up, all these lies, they would really just come and crumble on me. And I was not ready for that. I was like, no way, I'm holding on to that old. So, because it's also another thing that, well, first of all, no, yeah, I'm going to go into that later, right? But what I want to say about the intuition is, we are conditioned into not trusting our intuition and our instincts. Well, first of all, like I said before, like our view a lot of times is distorted and blinded. We don't even see clearly because of so many, programs, conditions, traumas, wounds, that we don't even know what is actually real. We don't see until we start peeling off these layers. And at the same time, yeah, we are conditioned, like the whole system works that these feminine qualities, this intuition is being demonized. It's like, oh, it's all just, the intellectual mind is being worshipped and the intuition is being neglected and demonized. Like, oh, this is just bullshit. This is just woo woo, blah, blah, blah. And so we don't trust ourselves. And it's just also like, I want to just bring in a whole other example, but it's something I talked about the other day with a friend. And even when we like when mothers, with mothers, we are conditioned into believing or giving away our power and trusting someone else with, first of all, when we're pregnant, with birth, but then also on how to take care of our babies. And so, especially there, because there's so many voices like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, blah, blah, blah. But deep inside a mother, she knows exactly what is best for her baby, and only her knows. And she always wants the best for the baby, right? And so I had that conversation with a friend the other day of another woman who has a really young baby, and who just feels like, the way she wants to actually take care of the baby, like she feels it deep inside, but then she says, like, all these voices, everyone is outside is telling me that what I feel, what I want to do is not correct, that I need to do it in another way. And it just makes me so sad. Like, that's, how we like from the start, like when, we are being born into a society where our mothers care for us the way other people tell them to, and not how they instinctively, intuitively feel to take care of their children. So, from the start, we are disconnected from that intuition. And it's really about time that we start to remember and we connect with that intuition, and that yeah, and we trust that intuition. And again, not just by how to parent or be a parent, how to take care of our babies, but how to take care of ourselves. And like when our intuition, our instincts, our gut is telling us something, to trust that. And yes, it's not always easy to act upon that, because that means to breaking free from all the conditioning and programming and maybe the illusions of lives that we have created in our minds, which is again only just an illusion. And so, just with my own experience, when I knew it deep within, but still, even the knowing, like, yeah, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't trust that. I had no connection to that. I was like, okay, that's just a feeling, but I don't really know what that even means. Where does that come from? Oh my God, no, if I trust that, that means I would have to leave that relationship. And of course, my mind, all these stories I created, didn't want that, because again, it would mean like everything would crumble. Everything that I have built, would be a lie. And so to really getting in tune again with that intuition and trusting that is key, right? But another thing that I want to bring in is what I said at the beginning, is that dynamic of narcissist and empath, right? And because that is already like, that is, I know it's kind of like a whole other topic. I mean, like, they're all talk hours and hours about everything about that, of intuition and the dynamic, but to kind of like keep it shorter and share, it's, the empath is the one who kind of like has no boundaries. Everything is like just open, no boundaries, and obviously always, but pleases people, right? Is like, anyone can just come in and just take whatever they want, and the empath is like, oh yeah, just I'll do that, I'll do it, right? It's like there's no boundary. And it's not even that the narcissist in that sense, consciously does that, but that happens on an unconscious level, on an energetic level. It's because energetically, you obviously like, you attract that. Like when there's like obviously like a hole that is like, or like an energy field that feels very open, right? The other one's like, whew, okay, I can just tag into that, right? And just take and take and take. And the other one is like, oh, give and give and give, because both actually receive. Like the narcissist just takes and takes, and the empath also kind of feeds off of that. It thinks it receives something, it receives love, but it's not love, right? And so unless we're conscious about that happens, it's unconsciously going on, right? There's this exchange of energy that we're not aware of, and until it actually clicks and we wake up and see it, or we are being shaken, right? And so it again, like, it wasn't until actually, yeah, a couple of years ago, when I started really working, like doing the womb work, when I started to become aware of the energetics of these sorts of dynamics, where I realized, wow, how I co-created that, how I was being actually addicted to that energy of suffering, of and of suffering and of drama. I was addicted to that. And it kind of like gave me something. And at the same time, I was being abused, and I just let that happen to me. It also stemmed from a real deep lack of self-love and of self-worth. I had none of that. I had no idea of what that even meant. And so the more I started to do womb work, the more I was actually becoming aware of my own energetic boundaries, and like of what I actually allowed in, and where it also, again, like, it stemmed from this place of lack, this place of neediness, of thinking someone else will complete me. And the more I did this work, the more I became complete and whole on my own, of my own energy, of my own light. And so the boundaries, the energetic boundaries have become more clear. And I no longer need that approval. And I see it now but again, it's important to realize where we co-create that, right? Because it's all just it's a huge mess in a way, right? And it's not just one side, it's always both sides. It always needs two, because it's like the one thing that you need from the other person, and he take, it's like, it's this dance, right? And as long as it's not done consciously and from a place of actually wholeness, completeness, it's always a draining. It's taking something, and we think we are receiving something, but we're not. We're only leaking energy. So it's really important, to notice when we tend to be more empathic, right, more sensitive, to have clear boundaries and to learn, because that is also, it stems from trauma, it stems from wounding, that we actually allow that to happen. And so to become aware of that and to work on that. And I don't remember who said it exactly, but I heard it from Bernhard Gunter. He quoted another person, which I'm sorry, I don't remember, about sensitivity, right? When we're like, we say like, oh, I'm so sensitive, and that's just who I am, and like that's how I always thought, like, oh yeah, I'm just so sensitive and blah blah. But there's no such thing as oversensitivity. There's only lack of embodiment. And boom, that hit me when I heard it the first time. I was like, exactly, that's what happened. Because the way, I was not embodied, I was completely disassociated, and so there were no clear energetic boundaries. And so that's when I allowed all of these, energies to tag into me, right? And so that's how the dynamic started. And so it's so important to really work on that, right? To become aware and to create those clear energetic boundaries, to becoming aware of that. And again, for me, what helped me was womb work. And not just any kind of womb work, but really that body of work that I have learned, that I'm also sharing, with other women. That in particular, that really resonated with me. And I know that's also the body of work I was supposed to find, because that's what I needed. That's exactly what I needed. And, just also knowing that when, I'm saying like, to know and realize where we co-created it, taking responsibility, but at the same time, not shaming and blaming ourselves for that. Like, oh, how could you be so stupid and do that? No, just acknowledging that and saying, yeah, I've done that, and I allowed that to happen, and it's okay. I hold myself, I forgive myself, I love myself, and have so much compassion. And only with that, we can actually go into this healing journey. And taking it as it's a game, right? Like my beautiful friend Satari always says, it's a cosmic joke, and it is, right? And so not taking it so seriously, but like seeing, okay, yeah, like, wow, that happened, I allowed that to happen, and it has taught me so many things, right? And so from there, I can see what I can work on, what needs to be healed, or what wants to be healed, right? And yeah, so again, like saying that this relationship actually really set me onto the path of healing, of transforming, of growth. And so that's why I am beyond grateful for that relationship. Like, and again, like I speak from my own experience, what I have experienced, and I know that he didn't mean to do that, right? It wasn't intentionally, it happened also through his own wounding. He did not know better. And we attracted each other because we both needed to learn that. We both were coming from that wounded place where we attracted each other and where we helped each other grow in that sense, right? And even though, again, it felt, like it was so painful. It was so painful. Like, I literally thought I would not come out of that. I was in a space of darkness that I didn't know that I was going to make it out alive, to be honest. And the worst was that I kind of suffered just by myself a long time. I did not share anything on how I really felt. I thought I needed to go through that by myself. So yeah, it was a difficult time. And so that's why I have so much love and compassion for myself, for how far I've come. And that's why I say, like, I'm grateful. I know somehow I decided, probably my soul decided that boom, I needed that to grow. And I did. And so I don't look back in resentment or anger. I have had my times where I felt all the rage, all the anger. I still do feel that there is still a lot that probably wants to come out and be transformed. But when I look back, I don't look back in anger or with resentment. I kind of look back in gratitude, and I see, where we both came from, right? And having compassion with myself, having compassion with him, and again, like, it's not my responsibility, like, where he's at, what he's doing, how he, deals with with all of that, right? I'm responsible for myself and my own healing, and I'm just, looking back and just, really seeing, like, wow, I'm grateful for that to happen, because if it wouldn't have happened, I would have not had that deep awakening. And yeah, it's interesting. It's also like, it's in a month, it's been 7 years since we broke up, or since he left me, let's say. I didn't want to break up. I was so attached, like I shared before, which in the end, I'm like grateful on how everything happened, because I needed to have a really strong wake-up call to wake up from that slumber and from that illusion. And yeah, so yeah, with this all being said, yeah, I thank you all for listening, for holding that space to listen to that. And again, what I just want to touch on to really shortly again is that intuition part, the intuition piece of really trusting that, like, building up that intuition, building up that relationship with that intuition, so we can trust that and we can act upon that, and we don't just ignore that and have to probably have a, difficult wake up. Which again, maybe that's what we need. That's what our journey is here in this earth. But, it's also about really learning how to get in touch with that intuition, how to get more in tune and sensitive about that, and trusting that. I think the most important thing is that trust, to build back that trust, the deep inner trust in our intuition, in ourselves, in our bodies, in our intelligence, and that wisdom from within, to really trust that. And I know to do that, we need to peel back a lot of layers. It's not a walk in the park, it's deep work. But that's the only way to do it, right? To get in touch with that. And it's such a gift to go onto that journey. And then the other piece is the empath narcissist dynamic of, like, really taking responsibility and creating those very, clear energetic boundaries. which then obviously translates into, physical boundaries. But when we have those energetic boundaries clear, it's so much easier to state them also, to express those boundaries. But we need to first even get to know ourselves, knowing our actual boundaries, like what that even means, and from that place we can then express those boundaries and express our truth, and trust that we are not going crazy. So if you are going through something like that and you notice that you're being gaslit, just know that you're not crazy, and really like seek out help wherever you can. Seek out help, be with a therapist or with friends, with family. Do not suffer on your own. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. And really, ask for help. Share your story. And know that you're not going crazy. That when your intuition is telling you he might be cheating on you, it most certainly is true. For as difficult as it sounds, for as harsh as it might sound. And it might hurt, the truth hurts, but it will set you free. So it's easier that it hurts, at the moment, because the longer we tell ourselves those lies, the more difficult it gets. And again, I'm just speaking out of experience. I know, I've been there. I've been in that relationship for 7.5 years, and it was not easy. And I'm still, again, like I'm saying, I'm still healing a lot. I'm still healing a lot from that. There has been a lot of trauma that has been caused, and I'm, but I'm not a victim to that. I am choosing to heal from that, choosing to taking my life back into my hands. So it's not easy, but again, the truth will hurt, but it will set you free. Wow, I could go on and on. So thank you so much for listening. And also I want to just share this, like, the work I do is all about that. It's really holding space for women that are going through the same or have gone through similar things, and to really bring back, come back to, so women can come back to their power, back to their bodies, and really trusting themselves again, trusting their intuition, and peeling back those layers and healing all these old wounds that still kind of hold us back from moving forward, right? And so I offer these spaces where we go through that deep healing through womb work, through energetic womb work, and also just holding space. So again, if you are in a situation where you went through that, just know that you're not alone, and that I'm also here to hold you and listen to your story. With this being said, I thank you again so much for listening, for tuning in. And if this resonates with you, if you want to share, send me a message. I'm very happy to hear your own thoughts on that, or maybe your own healing journey in that. And so I send you so much love, and I'll speak to you in another episode. Bye bye.